Question. Clearly, agriculture is a big issue in the 1st District. Let's talk a little bit about ethanol subsidies. They've come under some criticism. Farmers have enjoyed some relative prosperity in recent years with food prices going up, but there has been criticism about the level of ethanol subsidies. Where do you stand on this issue?
Well, I'm supportive of alternative energy. I don't want a single plan that is a simple drill here, drill now with no plan for the future. I want to use our domestic supplies to transfer us to alternative energies. And these alternative energies will create jobs. Our students who graduate from that Alden-Conger High School will be able to get jobs as chemical engineers in the 2nd and 3rd generation of cellulosic plants. This is the infancy of a business, and people talk about the prices being so high and our pork producers and all that. Corn has dropped 50% since its high in July. Our farmers aren't getting rich off this, but what we're seeing is it's an alternative to have value added right here at home to make sure that we're energy independent, creating jobs at home, taking away of our dependency on foreign oil. And if we allow this industry to die with the subsidies that have gone to nuclear and fossil fuels, we're not going to get to energy independence. So I support keeping them in place and making sure it's viable.
Greg Michelson?
I believe in alternative energy also, and I think supporting ethanol at the start was a good idea. We needed to work on some energy independence from foreign oil. But at some point in time, that industry needs to start stand on its own 2 feet. We also kind of covered up an underlying problem where we were using a lot of oil in the United States, and as we put ethanol into that program, we weren't really realizing the problems we were creating. We were procrastinating on looking at our energy programs and policies in the future. So it was a good program to start with, but it does need to stand on its feet in the future.
All right. Brian Davis, where do you stand on the issue of ethanol subsidies?
I believe that the government does have a role occasionally to help start an industry, and this is obviously a valuable industry for the country as a whole because we do need to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. But I've been out to ethanol plants and talked to people that are involved in the corn ethanol industry, and they'll be the first to admit that that's not enough. We can't use all our corn to convert into ethanol and to replace the imported fuel that we have. We do have to transition to cellulosic ethanol, but we don't know how long that's going to take. So in the meantime, we do need to continue to develop domestic oil and natural gas drilling. Congress should not stand in the way of that. We had $4 a gallon gas last summer, and that's a big problem. But I am proud as a Minnesotan that we are among the nation's leaders in ethanol and wind power and alternative fuel.
All right, let's stay on the topic of energy, and Greg Michelson, you will be first on this. Congressman Walz referenced the drill now mentality, and a lot of people who have favored that. Where do you stand on the issue of trying to reduce our dependence on foreign oil? Should there be more drilling? Should the Arctic National Wildlife Preserve be opened? What steps would you take to make us less dependent on energy from the Middle East?
I think we have to question the foresight of our congressmen and our government in general. In the past, they were the ones that put this ban on offshore drilling, and I don't see why they did that at the time. Now they're taking it off, but it really doesn't address the problem. I mean, if people were to start drilling now offshore of some of the states, and it should really be the states' issue of whether they want that drilling there and putting up leases, but when they start drilling in there, it's going to take a long time before we ever start getting any oil from that. Also in Anwar, when there was discussion about that many years ago, the oil company said there was really no reason to even be talking about it because it was too expensive to go up there. Now with oil a little bit higher, maybe they can, but let private industry work on its own. And
all right, your time is up. And Brian Davis.
Yes, I absolutely do support drilling in Anwar. The other day in Rochester, we had a debate on this subject, and my opponent, Mr. Walz, claimed that that would only give us 7 months of energy independence, yet he supports drawing down on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which would only provide 70 million barrels. That's 1/100th, less than 1/100th of what's available in Anwar. We absolutely should be drilling in Anwar. There's about $10 trillion worth of oil that's there, absolutely. Or excuse me, 1 trillion. Also, we've seen a change in Congress with respect to the positions on drilling. As recently as June, Mr. Walz talked about drilling as if it's a red herring. Now he's come out in the past number of weeks in favor of drilling. Are we to believe him now? Are we to believe you now that this is something that you're for when you recently called it a red herring?
And Tim Walz, your response.
The oil drilling ban is expired. It's no longer there, and it was put into place by President Reagan, Greg, and reauthorized by every single Congress up until last time. And was it 10 trillion or 1 trillion, Dr. Davis, the oil?
It's 10 billion barrels at $100 a barrel would be about $1 trillion.
The numbers change a lot on this. The point being on this is that oil alone, and I've supported a bipartisan energy plan where I worked with members of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party to come up with a solution that allowed for offshore drilling, taking those $1 trillion in royalties over the next 10 years, transition those into alternative energies, creating the second, third generation of cellulosic ethanol, creating wind generation, creating all of the other biofuels and the fuel cell technology. That way we can transition, create jobs here, and move ourselves off of that. This argument that someone's against drilling simply gets us stuck in the same boat. We need to move to the next generation.
Brian Davis, we haven't built a nuclear power plant in this country in 30 or 40 years. Do you support the expansion of nuclear energy?
Absolutely. I have called on the moratorium in Minnesota, nuclear power to be abolished. It's a great source of energy production. Trained as a nuclear engineer, I used to work in the nuclear power industry. It provides 24% of the electricity in the state of Minnesota. That's one of the reasons we have one of the lowest electricity costs in the country. That coupled with burning coal. Country of France, they produce 80% of their electricity from nuclear power. It's emission-free. It's proven itself safe. There have been no fatalities from nuclear power plant operation in this country in over 30 years, even with the waste issue. And the waste issue really, if you want to talk about a red herring, that's a red herring. So we need to move forward with nuclear power. We need it. I totally support it. It's a safe form of energy. In my medical practice, I'm a radiation oncologist. I treat cancer patients with radiation, so I certainly know about the side effects of radiation.
And Tim Walz.
I do. I support the expansion, but again, it's the red herring part of this is that's the Prairie Island facility where we haven't done anything with the storage, and we have an unsecured facility open to any type of attack, domestic or foreign attack on this facility. Very dangerous, and we need to make sure that reprocessing and waste storage is part of the plan. But I think one of the things we need to be very careful of is nuclear may be part of this, but it is the most highly subsidized of all of the energy that we have in this country, above oil, above coal, and especially above what my opponents are saying shouldn't be subsidized in terms of wind, biofuels, and things like that. So what we need to make sure is if we're going to do this, we need to make sure the science is there right on storage. We need to make sure if it's reprocessing, we get that done. And we need to make sure then that these highly expensive plants. But I do believe there's a role for it. I believe it'll help create jobs, and it can be part of the solution.
All right. Thank you. Greg Michelson.
Yes, I support safe nuclear energy. I think there's a lot of plants in Europe that are doing a very effective job. We also need to include in there, though, the safe storage of the nuclear waste in the future, too, and build that cost of storage for the duration of how long you have to store it into the cost of that electricity and energy costs, so our children don't have to bear the brunt of those costs also. There's a lot of technology in Europe that we're not using in America. I think that part of the problem in America that we haven't gone forward with nuclear energy and also getting some refineries built in America is because the EPA and other government agencies have put roadblocks in the way that we need to work and help those industries get started in America.
All right, let's move on to